needed 12, he'd get you 13. He just got the job done. And that's Kevin Millar and what he did to loosen up the dressing room. I'm telling you, everybody, whether you love baseball or not, you're going to love this documentary. And, you know, things were so bad that at one point, Jonathan Lemire, you actually had Tom Warner sitting there sort of writing the concession speech in 04, thinking, we're going to repeat the horrors of 03. And he's sitting there writing, and somebody in the ninth inning taps his hand and goes, hey, you better look at the game. This one may not be over yet.
Yeah, it was 2003, the heartbreaking defeat, Aaron Boone with the home run off of Tim Wakefield. 2004, it's not just that they were losing, they were humiliated. They lost Game 3 at home 19-8. And I will admit, I, like most Red Sox fans, thought it was over. But then in Game 4, the comeback, the Millar walk, the David Roberts steal, and then, of course, Big Pop, Bill Miller, the hit to tie it, and then David Ortiz in extra innings. Cement beginning the legend of Big Papi, wins it. And, you know, it is 20 years later. This documentary is spectacular. Cannot wait to relive it. It's 20 years later. I actually still can't believe it. Like, I still can't believe it. You know, growing up, you know, wishing for just one title, and now to be so blessed with 4, and how they win that first one. It transcended sports. And I'll just say, I know my grandfather, who lived his whole life rooting for the Red Sox, you know, he passed away a couple years after 04, but he made it. He made it. And I think that's what means so much to so many people.
You know,
amazing.
Joe,
We're going to have, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Just one added element for Willie's benefit and for many Yankees fans' benefit. There's an element in the film where Joe Torre, after Game 7 in 2004, when the Red Sox come from down 3-0, Joe Torre, after that game, the Yankees defeated, called Tim Wakefield in the other clubhouse because he so respected him and what happened in 2003. And in 2004, a year later, Joe Torre calls Tim Wakefield.
All class.
Yeah, absolutely class. Absolutely.
Joe, I was at that Game 7 in 2004 in Yankee Stadium, and it wasn't even close. Johnny Damon hits the 2 home runs for the Red Sox before he came over to our side, and we were just shocked. It had never happened before, hasn't happened since in baseball, coming back from 3-0. And perhaps 2 weeks from now, another curse will be broken. 15 years since the Yankees last won a World Series. A decade and a half, Joe. There are children in the New York metro area who've never seen a World Series title. Perhaps that documentary will start to be written Friday at 8 o'clock, Dodger Stadium.
Dodgers.
Well, and let me just say, we feel your pain.
Thank you.
And I think I speak for all of America when I say today, we are all Dodgers fans.
Okay. Well, we're going to be able to really get a sneak peek on the comeback tomorrow, so much more tomorrow. Let's get to our top story this hour. Vice President Kamala Harris visited 3 battleground states yesterday, along with former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney. They were making an appeal to Republican voters who may not like Donald Trump, but are still on the fence about supporting a Democrat. Together, they tried to hammer home the danger the former president poses and that he is not fit for the office of the presidency.
In this race, we have the opportunity to vote for and support somebody you can count on. We're not always going to agree, but I know Vice President Harris will always do what she believes is right for this country.
We have in our grasp the ability to determine the course of our country. You know, every election we've said this is the one. This is the one. This truly is the one.
It's not about party. It's about right and wrong. And I certainly have many Republicans who will say to me, I can't be public. They do worry about a whole range of things, including violence, but they'll do the right thing. And I would just remind people, if you're at all concerned, you can vote your conscience and not ever have to say a word to anybody. And there will be millions of Republicans who do that on November 5th, vote for Vice President Harris. Like, if you wouldn't hire somebody to babysit your kids, like, you shouldn't make that guy the president of the United States. I mean, that's like pretty basic.
When we talk about character, it is the sign of strong character to have empathy. to have some level of concern and care about the well-being of other people, and then to do something about that. And I think there's so much about this election that calls into question whether we are on a track with a Donald Trump as president to actually teach and to show our children our definition of a leader. And is that it? One of the issues that I think has resulted in the kind of toxicity that you've been describing is that he tends to encourage us as Americans to point our fingers at each other. That's not in our best interest.
All right, let's bring in former MSNBC host and contributor to Washington Monthly, Chris Matthews, and co-host of The Weekend on MSNBC, Simone Sanders Townsend. It's good to have you both. Chris, I'd like to start with you and talk about what we just saw. Two women from completely different backgrounds, completely different points of view, carrying the torch of freedom and democracy together.
Well, Mika, I wouldn't think a few years ago I would ever be singing the praises of a Cheney member of the family, a member of that family. I really did not like the Iraq War, and I didn't like the neocons, and Cheney was leading them all, and he took us into that war, and it killed almost 200,000 people in Iraq, and it served no purpose. They had a bunker, a barrier against Iran, and they got rid of it. Anyway, she is a character almost out of the movies, out of A Man for All Seasons. I've never seen a more heroic figure than Liz Cheney. She lost her state probably forever. She lost her party. She lost her leadership in the Republican House. She could have been on her way to Speaker. It was very probable. She gave it all away in the interest of truth. That's what she stood for. It's amazing to me how few people have gotten behind her. But now one person that's got behind her is Kamala Harris. And those sitting together, those two women, as you say, on that stage is remarkable because there's such courage there from Liz Cheney. And I cannot say anything that would stop me from saying she's been unbelievable. And I think now if they use her for the next 2 weeks, I also want to say something about the Democrats. If you're going to use her, repay her when you get in office. Don't just act like you're giving a little nod to a Republican. Clean up some of your act. You got problems, Democrats. You don't have all the answers. You got to do much stuff for action on the border. You have to get serious about it and come up with a reasonable way of getting people into the country in a reasonable way and let them become citizens in time. But you got to do something. You can't just say, I'm with Biden. That's not too good. And you can't say on the inflation, it's world inflation. Nobody cares about the world. They want to know why their prices are going up. So I think the Democrats got a lot of things to clean up. But one of the things they need to show is courage and guts. And that woman has it.
Yeah, I'm going to also point to the other woman on stage, Kamala Harris, Joe, who's really meeting a very complicated moment in our history. And she's reaching out not just to Liz Cheney publicly and working with her to get the support of Republicans. She has been reaching out and getting the support of hundreds of Republicans. And it is a complicated moment to me.
It really is. There's no playbook for this.
None.
No rule. I mean, the fact that you have over 100 officials from Republican administrations in the past, that you have almost every senior leader from Donald Trump's last run in the White House, that you have so many Republicans, the Cheneys, all the way back to Ken Edelman, all supporting a Democrat. Unheard of, unprecedented. There's no playbook for it. But Liz Cheney is writing that new playbook. And if it works, it is historic. And we've had Americans saying for quite some time that they were tired of the divisions in America. You look at the polls and you see time and again Americans saying they want Democrats and Republicans to work together. They want politicians to stop acting like children. They want compromise. These are in the polls. You won't hear it in either primary, but that's what Americans are saying. And here, Simone, it seems to me, is dramatic visual evidence of this happening for the voters. And there's an old song that Paul McCartney wrote called If You Want It, here it is. Come and get it.
Yeah.
Sung by Badfinger. Well, if you want it, if you want parties working together, if you want people who have completely different worldviews coming together in the best interest of our country, it's right there for them, isn't it, Simone?
It's right there. Look, I think what is remarkable about this moment is that Vice President Harris and her campaign, they have not made any policy promises to earn the support of Republicans. Liz Cheney is very consistent when she says, we have real policy differences, but I believe that Kamala Harris will be a good president. She said, we have real policy differences, but I have no doubt that when she's sitting in the Oval Office, will be fighting for Americans. And I think that's what makes this moment different. Every single election, you know, when I've been out there on the campaign trail talking to folks, especially some of the younger voters, they say, oh, every election, people say this is the most important election. And why is this different? And to be clear, they're right. We have been saying that for a very long time. One could argue that there were times where it was said when it was not necessary, okay? I think right about now, people would love to have Mitt Romney, okay, in this race opposed to Donald Trump. But the reality is that this is different because this is about this American experiment, our democracy. And if Vice President Harris is successful, it will be because she reached out and built a broad coalition, but she didn't compromise any of the policy values and the values that she has to do that. And so Democrats should see this and be heartened that there are folks coming to the Democratic candidate, joining the big tent because they believe that this is the person that literally can chart a new way forward. And I really just think that's important to hammer home because folks out there will have seen all of this engagement for trying to garner the support of Republicans. And they say, well, what about the base? And I agree. It's a both and. And I think coupled with the engagements that the vice president did last week, now what she is doing this week, this is how you close. This is how you close the race. This is your argument that you literally will be a president for everybody, and that this moment requires us all to rise to the occasion.
Bring out the base and then grow it, as Simone says. That's what Liz Cheney is trying to get permission of those Nikki Haley Republicans to come out and vote for Kamala Harris. Piece that caught our eye this morning, senior political correspondent for the National Review, Jim Garrity, writing a piece titled "The Chronically Underestimated Kamala Harris." Jim writes this, quote, "It is almost required in conservative circles to insist Kamala Harris is stupid. But there's this nagging complication. If Kamala Harris is as stupid as her critics claim, why does she have the Democratic presidential nomination and a roughly 50-50 shot of being the first female president in U.S. history? Do you know how many ruthlessly ambitious Democratic men and women have desperately yearned to get where she is? How many smart, tough, shrewd, often underhanded and cold-blooded Pauls have tried to claw their way up the greasy pole and fallen short? And somehow this supposed dunce managed to do it. She is particularly talented," writes Garrity, "by another measuring stick, one that may be even more important in politics. She is exceptionally skilled at getting other people emotionally invested in her success. If Kamala Harris is such a hapless dunce, how does she keep getting so many other people to work around the clock to elect her?" Caddy K. That appearing in the National Review, obviously a conservative publication. Jim Garrity, I'm sure, has many disagreements with Kamala Harris on policy and has written about them, but suggesting here that Kamala Harris is underappreciated and underestimated.
I love the piece. It made me laugh even when you were reading it. I hadn't seen it before, Willie, so thank you. You've cheered up my morning.
There you go.
Look, I mean, to some extent, this is, I think, what... And I